Have we just seen the last major low before the halving party, or is the dump just getting started?
Let me into my zone. Please don't let me into my zone. 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 Please don't.
Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave. Got some nice clickbait for you in the early morning hours as I'm coming to you from very early but overcast and nice and cold Helsinki, Finland. I've been up since like 4:30 a.m., which is really good for my mental health. Anyways, plenty to talk about today, especially on the short-term timeframes and the medium-term timeframes as we do get into this good old event after a nice weekend dumpy dump. We did speak about the short-term timeframes yesterday, coming back down and swiping around 8,200 to 8,100 region. I believe that we've seen that move. Now coming back up and just playing out the range again. So realistically, the higher term timeframes have not really changed around all that much, but the short and medium term timeframes, yes, we can say quite a bit about today. So with that said, I do want to prepare for the new week of new opportunities. And with that said, I would like to wish you the best and the happiest of the happiest. It's free to do, and maybe it even helps someone out over there. Anyways, let's now put the focus on the Krown Trading application, which can be found at app.krowntrader.net. It's free. Take advantage of it. It's all good. And what do we see here? We see that the open interest is actually coming down quite significantly, all the way from about 950 million, very close to a billion just a few days ago, down to about 750 million, which suggests that we are going to see a big phase here get started. So to me, as long as Bitcoin kind of maintains above the $700 million marker and doesn't break any of the long-term major areas, as we're going to speak about in just a second here, I don't really see any sort of major change to be made to the long-term analysis. However, the short-term analysis definitely going to be operating within the bounds between about 700 million and 850 million, as that really accurately got the last sort of phase that Bitcoin was in. On top of that, we do see that the fear and greed index has actually come down quite healthily to a 40 marker, all the way from what was about 55 just a few days ago. The high said it's been in about maybe 2+ months actually at this point. And all the metrics are coming down as well, as you'd imagine, after a nice, $1,500 drop over the weekend, as well as Bitcoin dominance as well, which I would actually not have been expecting, but expectations are a terrible thing to have in a trader's lexicon. More importantly, with that, I'm still long-term bullish on it. We'll talk about the critical areas there, although they're more or less the same, and I really don't have too much to update with regards to that. So with that said, let's get into the actual live scene right now and look at some Bitcoin price analysis. So Bitcoin, or actually before, let's just get into it right now. Okay, so Bitcoin still riding the 21 exponential moving average on the daily, but like I said, it's really the short-term timeframes here that are actually going to accurately get the action rather well. And what do we see? We do see that Bitcoin did get that next wick down into the 200 exponential moving average, as we said was very likely yesterday, and then popped back up pretty damn healthy above that as well, of which I did get, for full disclosure, I did get position in. And now, as long as Bitcoin just kind of holds this blue box territory right here, as we spoke about yesterday, at 8,500 base on a 4-hour total closure, I actually do think that it probably tries to reaccumulate first and gives us a run up into the low 9,000, somewhere around 9,100-ish region. That's where the medium-term time frame starts to change around for me. If Bitcoin can close above here, anywhere, especially like a 4-hour dodo, even a 2-hour probably gets it, or even just a wick above this prior high, which is 9,200, so about $50 above the blue box territory. I would look for extension, technically at the very least to about 9,400, but personally speaking, I do think that Bitcoin would likely pop back up into the $9,700 region, as I was saying yesterday, if those conditions are met. Again, a big if, and I always have to be very careful with how I relate my analysis from the short-term timeframes, the medium timeframes, and the high and the macro timeframes, how they're all related to each other, because sometimes I read the comments and sometimes it's really great. For the majority, it's actually really awesome, and it's very cool to see that most people get it, which is fucking cool. And then you read some and it's like, maybe I did a bad job of explaining it, or maybe something else is going on here. Who knows? Anyways, so yes, the reason why I actually do think that it is possible that we would pop back around here is not just looking at this as likely a reaccumulation as long as we're above the 200 exponential moving average on the 4-hour, and more importantly, the daily 21 exponential moving average, which by the way was, we did not have any bearish divergence on that time frame. It was a 12-hour. Yes, the 12-hour had both a Joule sell signal and bearish divergence, of which we did hit the targets on those. But more importantly, it's actually the next big, major, massive CME gap right around this area, of course. So if Bitcoin does retake 9150, we'll call it, or even just wicks above 9200, I do think that we will pop back up and fill this gap before anything else. Now, of course, I'm breaking my own rule with kind of like gap analysis. At the end of the day, I only respond to price action when it has actually, gotten to those regions. However, there are a few things interesting here on the CME chart. We do have officially a 12-hour dildo golden cross, which, yes, I do kind of consider this to test as it is. The daily should be following through relatively soon as well. But as typical with these crosses, especially for the people in the TA program who can reference the EMA module, what you want to be looking at right here is how does Bitcoin pick itself up on this test down? If we do see a nice boost back up, and especially as long as it holds the 200 simple and even a little bit more conservatively, the 21 exponential moving average right here on a daily closing basis, I do look at this as the test of a potential golden cross. And as long as Bitcoin remains above these pivots right here, which on the lower term timeframes would be akin to that 4-hour 8500-ish region, now kind of relating the low term timeframes and the higher term timeframes, these will inevitably get the golden cross. And, historically speaking, in Bitcoin's life, been relatively good for Bitcoin. Is it perfect? No. Is it always going to work out perfect? Is it always going to work out, in a phenomenal way? No, of course not. But does it get the job done more often than not? It's good enough for me to put a trade on. And at the end of the day, that's really what it's all about, getting trades, because trades is all a game of statistics at the end of the day. And you can have a perfect setup and then it just doesn't work out. You can have a perfect setup and it does work out. You can have a terrible setup, but you do have some sort of edge there. Well, if it's a terrible setup, probably shouldn't be taking it, but it can still work out. At the end of the day, statistics are statistics, right? We want to be playing for the long term if you are coming at this channel as a trader, which is who I essentially speak towards, because I'm just speaking for myself. So fair enough. Anyways, looking at this right here, there are a few other considerations. We obviously do have some pretty nasty hidden bearish divergence actually between the 10,500 last major high right here and the high that we just put in right here. So if I do want to represent both sides, I do think that Bitcoin could have some pretty nasty downside here. If it does get downside continuation below the next critical level, which on the higher term time frames is about 8,000-ish region, which we'll get into a little bit later, I would look for another $1,000 extension at the very least down to the low 7,000s, upper 6,000s, and then we'll come back and reassess after that. But for right now, we do have hidden bearish divergence present on this time frame, but what about a weekly? Is it present here as well? And no, it is not. So the weekly typically does get the long-term trend very, very well for Bitcoin. And as it is right now, we do not have any hidden bearish divergence. By the way, shout out to Bali for putting this one together. Actually, Bali and Pig, the pig himself, as we actually do have another new indicator, which is actually pretty damn useful, which I'll be getting into more later. Anyways, okay, so while we're at it, what other things do we want to get through before? Yeah, I mean, realistically, I actually do think that the 4-hour time frame gets things relatively well here. If we do break below 8,500, I would look for extension down here to test around the 200 exponential moving average once again. We do see that essentially the 200 simple and 200 exponential moving average are coming in at a very critical region, kind of outline that. It's rather wide, and I do think that this trend line coming in from our March 13th lows, coming in all the way back here, valid for the last almost 2 months now, is kind of cuts it to the middle and probably gets things for the long-term region. So if we actually do break this region, which I will now mark off at like 8,100, we'll call it, do something like this, 8,100-ish region, then yes, I would be looking for a downwards extension at the very least to 7,500 relatively quickly. I do believe that we get at the very least a bounce around 7,500. I'm actually going to get rid of this area right here because I think these charts are just getting too convoluted and it's not really visually appealing. So we'll do something like this. Actually, sorry, I'm making some art right now, some good old chart art. Sometimes you're just drawing random lines, but I do think that this one does work a little bit better. So if we do break this area right here, again, about 8,100 on a 4-hour delta closure, then I would look for extension at the very least down to about 7,500, 7,550-ish region. I do think that we would get a bounce there. Let me actually just shift this blue box over so we can get a nice bird's eye view on it. And then, I'd want to see the bounce in real time, but realistically, I do think that we get further downside continuation after that, especially if we see a spike up in open interest, which right now, for reference, at the recording of this video on the 11th of May, it is 760 863 million. So if we were to see it to jump up above like 850 million, once again, that would be a damn good sign that we will go very, very, very likely lower to, at the very least, upper 6,000s, and then we'll come back and reassess from there. And actually, I'll mark off that area right now. It's going to be this guy right here. It's actually more so like the low 7,000s is what I have. Something like that would be about right. Okay, cool. Until that happens, though, I actually do think that more sideways here is actually more indicative of reaccumulation. I feel like we've seen this before where Bitcoin gets a very nasty move over the weekend. It can be both to the upside or the downside. But because it happens during the weekend, I just have never seen any reversal that was contrary to the week's direction ever get follow through during the real trading week after that. Typically, it's actually a fake out. Or if it is going to get continuation, it's going to get another try to the upside, or, to the other side first, and then if it's going to turn into rejection, then we actually confirm it down to, or a reversal of trend during the actual trading week. That's kind of my point here, and so far that is holding still true with the short-term time frames really actually wrapping it in quite tightly here. So I do think that more sideways is overall good, and I do think that this will be forced into a resolution somewhere around here, somewhere around about 1 week from now. I do believe that this will be forced into a resolution, whether it's down to about 7,000 or back up to 10,000. Actually, I do feel quite confident in that. On top of that, we can go over to the 12-hour once again, and I want to see if that historical volatility percentile is still increasing. Yes, indeed it is, and actually increasing quite a bit. That moving average has remained with an upward slope, as we said, so that's still following through. And remember, this is the culmination of 2 months of of contraction, which typically in Bitcoin's history, as we see back on over here in December 2019 and back on over here in November 2018, both of these were precipitating major massive moves right here and right here. One to the downside, one to the upside, as you can see. So that's a big thing, kind of still on the side of at least another try towards continuation, at least another try. Looking at our 2-day total time frame, I would also still say that the 200 simple moving average more or less gets things pretty damn well on this closure too, and it will be closing, I believe, later tonight. Yes, it will be closing later tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So as long as we're closing, especially above the 10 simple, which would put us above all major moving averages, but even less so the 200 simple right here, which is currently at about 8,500. So now making a relationship between the lower term time frames and the higher term time frames. Once again, if we were to close below there, then yes, lower term, at the very least, 8,000 is going to get extremely likely tested, and I do think that it probably would break at that point. But as long as we're above the 200 simple and especially the 10 simple, I do think that this actually can flip back around. Although it will be fraught with peril at the end of the day. We do see 2-day SOX coming down quite aggressively. We do see 2-day RSI breaking the exponential on this baby as well. And do we have that same hidden bearish divergence? No, just barely not actually. But more importantly on this, we do have the 2-day total golden cross, which has been officially confirmed as of yesterday, I would say. And what happened after that? Will we come back down and test it? Well, that sounds pretty damn similar to what we've done in the past. Let me actually get a nice bird's eye view on. Well, I'll keep this one on right there. I guess we kind of need to keep them all on. All right, we'll keep them all on. All right, fair enough. I'll have a conversation with myself and argue against myself. Anytime that we do get a golden cross or a death cross, typically does pop back or drop back to the next major moving average and test that before further continuation. For example, right here, 2-day dildo golden cross comes back down, tests a 21, nicely done. Right on over here, death cross pops back up, tests a 55. You get where I'm going with this. Same thing in 2014, 2015 right here on the death cross, and then again on the golden cross. There's only a few examples, but that does seem to be pretty damn consistent over the long period of time. Not only that, but I believe with the way that CME's weekly closed, I'm curious to see how that formation on the RSI actually worked out, and it looks like It looks like I have a different indicator, so I don't have the same chart in there. But still, if we just redraw it like this, still have this massive falling wedge, which as it stands, does look like we're kind of breaking back into it. Of course, need to wait until the end of the week, but if we do close back above this region, I actually would be looking at this as a nice support level. And I would be and I'd be looking at that as just a retest of the broken wedge, and before getting another move to the upside, or actually a little bit more accurate like this. Okay, so it would need to get quite a bit above. And actually, this would be the next thing to add on to this indicator if Bali's listening right now. If I could put in or understand what a price point would be in order to get a read on the RSI, that would be pretty damn cool. And I'm sure that it can be done because, well, it's just a formula at the end of the day. By the same token, this also does really look. I mean, if it does end below this area by the end of the week, then that really does look like a fake out, and we very likely will play out some pretty nasty downside, like I said, at the very least to low 7,000s and probably beyond from a Fibonacci sorry, I almost said Fibonacci moving average, Jesus, although that you actually could make some sense out of that. From a Fibonacci perspective, we do see that playing between the 618 and the 0.5 is not really giving us all that much, but still kind of getting it nonetheless. And more importantly, if we do break below the 0.5, typical bot and algo target is going to be driven towards a 382 down around here. More aggressively, we'll see like the 236 or the what is it, the 182 I believe it is, but that's extremely far away, and this is for a big piece of price action right here. So that would align with a lower $7,000 tick. It's kind of the point that I'm getting towards, but still a little bit of bit of perspective here on the higher term timeframes, just because these ranges are rather big right now. So it does make being aggressive difficult, because managing risk on these these bigger ranges is inherently gonna have more risk, of course. Also the potential rewards much more as well. But looking at the monthly here at 2, I still hold on to what I've been saying for a while. As long as we are above the 21 exponential moving average, this yellow moving average right here, I'm not like long-term bearish. However, if we were to close May, for example, kind of where we are right now, and then take out the low side of this, then that's going to look a lot like a reversal and just a lot like another lower high on the macro scale. And yeah, I'd very likely get bearish on that. But for right now, it does seem like things are more or less kind of sideways, and we probably get another test to the upside. That's my general disposition right here, mostly gained off the lower term timeframes. So we'll go back to them now, and what do we see on the 4-hour? 4-hour Stokes are getting quite low, but that's not a buy in and of itself. They actually look like they have pressure onto the downside once again, and we do have this nice trend line forming somewhere down around here, around the edge of the critical zone. So I do think that we're probably going to cross back down again, swipe somewhere around these wicks perhaps, and assuming that it doesn't break down, well, then we should flip back around and once again pop back up into the blue, above the poo box territory. So another potential opportunity there. We also do have, I believe, we have bullish divergence on the 4-hour? We do have bullish divergence on the 4-hour. Hasn't mostly played out though. The easy part of it's played out, but typically speaking, I would target the 21. And where's the 21? It's right in the midst of this this blue box to the upside right here, which is at 9100ish region or 9050ish region. So I do like that actually. I still think that that's rather likely. But do we get another derivative divergence first? Momentum oscillators would actually suggest that that's certainly a possibility here. We'll look at probabilities later. Same thing with the 3-hour. We do have bullish divergence here present as well, but also a downtrend. You could look at this as a descending triangle on the lows, usually continuation formation. So I do want to cover both sides here accurately. I don't want to come off as if I am going to show my bias boner, which is very embarrassing sometimes. Then I want to be very, very deliberately differentiating between my opinion, aka my bias, and just straight up technical analysis, because that straight up technical analysis is more or less just levels and statistics. That's really all that I look at it at the end of the day. It boils down to something like that. 2-hour, same thing. Does have bullish divergence here present as well, and we do see that 2-hour Stokes are actually heading back up. Let's see what the hourlies are doing here. They're floating around, and hourly RSI did give us bullish divergence, but I'd say that that's played out already. So what does this look like based off of momentum oscillators in the lower term time frames, and what I can kind of hold on to a little bit more? I do think that we're going to get another swipe down, probably below 8500ish region, maybe around 8400, something like that. But assuming that we don't make a lower low below this guy right here, even on a wick base, and I do think that this would actually likely get it, which is 82.50 on Mexico. I do think that we'd end up just having a lost momentum and flip back around and likely tag up towards the 9100-ish region. Give or take about $50 from that. From that upwards target above 9100, I do target. Theoretically, I should be targeting 94, and we'll just get rid of this one right here as well. But personally speaking, I don't think it'd stop there. Maybe a short-term pullback there. Realistically, I think that it'd pop back up all the way towards 9700, 9800-ish region and fulfill the good old gap, or at least around the gap on CMEs, which will likely count for it. So let's go see what the reverse Stochastic indicator cross would kind of suggest. I'm just curious where the momentum starts to change around for the hourly, which doesn't account for all that much. It will remain to the downside as long as we are below 87.50. Makes sense because that's essentially just creating lower highs on this time frame. What about a buy hourly? Remains to the upside as long as we're above 8,400. So I actually do like that, bracketing off our lower, our last lower low right here on this same time frame. As long as Bitcoin essentially remains above there, momentum from this time perspective remains the upside. So that that does make sense. Meaning also, if we do close back down below there, then momentum is gained towards the downside. At the very least, at that point, I'd say 8,000. What about the 3 hour? 3 hour showing 8,600. As long as we're above 8,600, it will remain to the upside. So perhaps, the 3 hour actually does tell quite a bit here. Now, 3 hour Joule is going to be lining up for a continuation halting or short signal. So that's a big contingency there. But do we get a swipe down here first towards like 8,400? I think perhaps yes. But as long as it's closing above 8,600 on this time frame, momentum is actually to the upside, technically speaking, on the lower term time frames. And for the 4 hour, it will be crossing to the upside if Bitcoin does close a 4 hour dildo, or this next one, I should say, in 2 hours and 1 minute and 4 seconds above 87.09 spot 4. So that area also very, 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 very important for the upside. If Bitcoin can even close a 2 hour dildo above 8,700, or let's call it like 8,750 to be a little more conservative, then yes, I do think that we would get another boost back up to about 9,100. Now, the reason also why I'm very hesitant to be short-term bearish here, or at least until those conditions are met, is because futures for especially NAS are still looking good. I mean, new high to open up on. And world markets in general actually looking good here. Same sort of gap on NAS futures here, somewhere right around about 9,400 to 9,450-ish region. So I do think that we probably head for that target first and then play out some downside. That's probably also some major fib. If I had to guess, it's going to be the 236. Let's see if that's going to be right or not. We'll do something like this. Well, on a bearish retracement, that would be on a bullish retracement. On a bearish retracement, it's going to be the 886, of course. So still there is a long-term bearish look on this, even though I do think that the lows for this are in, and also I believe that would be the measured move from the ascending triangle target right here as well. Let's see, just doing like a bad measurement. Yep, indeed, it would be right in the midst of that blue box. So I do think that we probably reach towards that region, short-term pullback, and then come back and reassess most likely. Looking at Japan also kind of following the rest of the world markets, making new highs to start off the new week. However, it did fill the gap right here and down initially. So I do think that Japan is more or less following U.S. markets right now. But I would say that this is a nice level right here to be watching. Nice psychological level as well at 20,000 yens, I guess. And if it does break back down below that, I'd be looking for this one to come back down significantly after that, as with U.S. markets as well. But I think U.S. markets are a little bit more easy to read right now. German markets, probably not open for the day. It's not showing that they're closed right here, but they're certainly not opened right now. It's only 9 a.m. my time, so they probably open up in like an hour or two. But this one looking okay as well. I want to have an alert right here just to see if they actually do take it out, 11,200. If that does happen, I'd look for a shot towards the 200 exponential moving average. Looking pretty good there. India under pressure, it looks like, but I don't think that they really lead, and I don't know why I'm watching them right now. Silly me, taking too many requests. Why, sir? Why? Okay, cool. So NAS futures probably do have some bearish divergence in the lower term timeframes. Actually, we do certainly on hourly RSI. Oh, and there we go. Yeah, we have the reverse RSI indicator right here as well. Nicely done. Oh, fuck yeah, Bali. This is cool. It's super cool, man. All right, let's see. Do we actually have inputs for... All right, that's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. All right, awesome. Very cool. I'm actually really looking forward to getting deep into that one. But yeah. Okay, cool. Alrighty. Okay, is there any sort of divergence working on any higher time frame than an hourly here? 2 hour, yes, as well, actually. So I do think that we probably pop back down around 9200-ish region first, a little bit below 9200, but I'd be looking for a little bit of a bouncy bounce there. We'll see what things look like when the open happens. I'm very skeptical of pre-market and aftermarket price action. Let's go look at gold really quick as well. Gold looks, I mean, do you look at this as a symmetrical triangle? Or do you look at this as a, as a descending triangle? Well, I guess in this case, because the former trend was to the upside, give it the benefit of the doubt. But that it's hard not to say that that does not look like a descending triangle. It certainly does. The measure move on it would be more or less the same. If we do break it to the downside, I'd be looking for a move down to like 1630-ish region. If we break it to the upside, I'd be looking for a move probably towards 1800-ish region. The weekly looks fine to me. I don't have any real issues with the weekly. I do think that we probably tested downside of this of this triangle support, and then likely I do actually think that this one will break to the upside. RSI looks more or less healthy. I don't have any real issues with this. Kind of looks like it's flagging out over the long period of time, something like this, although that would suggest that we have a lot longer to go within this region before giving it a legitimate break. And then also, weekly jewel, maybe not lining up just yet. The monthly also just looks more or less okay to me too. I still kind of stick with that 1800-ish plus region long term. If it did even have a move down to 1630-ish this month, I would look at that as likely an opportunity. I'm not bearish on this as long as it's above 1620, 1630 on a higher time frame closure, for the long term. For short term, again, ranges here are pretty damn well documented. The 4 hour looks a lot more healthy than the daily actually. And what's up? Lorenzo, good to meet you, man. Welcome to the cave. And that also reminds me, I will not be on Twitch later today. I'm going to be setting up a new setup. I'm also in the process of building a new computer. Although I didn't get perhaps the most important part because, they didn't have it and they didn't have any cases. But I actually have been uploading videos to a new channel that I have. Eventually, I have a channel for all my hobbies and passions. It's about gaming. It's about Total War, so probably not for everyone. But if you are interested in that, if you are interested in a little bit of gaming action, or if you enjoy a strategy game, or if you just like to watch massive battles go down, the channel's name is Total Krown, Total. Well, fuck, why am I spelling it out to you? You already know this. You know how to spell most likely. If you don't, then you're probably not on the internet if that's you. But yeah, man, more than happy to hang out there as well. But for now, as long as I'm kind of getting the rest of the setup done, which I'm just looking at right now and realizing that it's going to be a pretty big job, no Twitch streams until then. I've made a rule with myself. Okay, cool. What about the daily right here on Bitcoin spot? Is there anything of particular interest? Historical volatility percentile still kind of in the same phase. It looks like to me. Daily RSI does look like it wants to probably pop back up and test around the bullish control zone. I'm curious where that would be. No, that 70 would be overbought. I would want to know where the bullish control zones start as well, Bali, if that's possible to be done, which I'm sure that it is. And then again, if I wanted to use yesterday's wick low as a continuation point, for an easy or more aggressive downside trade, could it work? Yes, it could work. Could you get fucked with a quick wick back up? Yeah, and I actually do think that that's why the 4 hours is actually even better to use right now, just because it'll give you it'll likely give you a heads up beforehand, and there doesn't need to be like any of that ambiguity there. So yeah, let's see. I feel like there's some other things that I'm drastically missing. 12-hour Jewel for all the people who have the Jewel, of which I was reading the Jewel chat the other day. Holy shit, man! There's some people like absolutely nailing the signal, and I we were talking about it over here, but I wasn't looking for it to play out, or I wasn't looking for it to play out during the weekend. I was looking for it to play out right after the halving, actually. As I've been saying, there is a pullback expected, not only the 2-day golden cross, but also the 12-hour golden cross. Well, I think that we've gotten that. At least this is a pretty massive move right here. I mean, a 20% move is pretty damn good. But also, just to kind of cover this up as well, and we're probably getting towards the end of this anyways. Golden cross on the 12-hour, anytime that we've had this has gotten tested down to at least a 55 every time in the history of Bitcoin from what I've seen. Same thing over here. Bitcoin is initially on a nice uptrend, pulls in the golden cross, and then Bitcoin shatters down for, from top to bottom, a 10.5% move, and then tests 55, kind of similar to what we're doing right now, and boom, $2,000 or $2,500 move to the upside to 10,500. Same thing, same thing on the death crosses as well. Does not the best timer, but does get the momentum very, very well. Same thing over here on this iteration where we do have the golden cross. Bitcoin trades sideways, tests down to 55 for about a month, but after that, more than a 2x, almost a 3x to 15,000 or 14,000. And then same thing, if you want to go back down around here as well, I guess we can just briefly do it while we're here. I guess the last one really was 2014, 2015 switch up in October. Getting the golden cross right here does, gets an initial massive move to the upside. This one obviously more impressive than what we've done just now. 100% move after the golden cross, but just as equally diabolical, does crash back down to almost a 200 exponential moving average, but definitely the 55 and chops around there for a little bit for a 35.5% drop down right there. And same things, in the years prior. So again, is this within the context, or is this within the greater context of the history of Bitcoin? Yeah, I do think so. But I would also remain or I'd like to remain with the ability. I would like to have the opinion that I can change my opinion. No, of course, if Bitcoin breaks below 8,000, I wouldn't be looking for any real upside anytime soon. I'd be looking for more downside. Like I said, 7,000, at least 7,500 relatively quickly, and probably 7,000 overall at the very least. Okay, let's go check out expected moves range. Do we want to go look at the halving chart again? Why not? Nah, you already know about the halving chart. Typically, Bitcoin does pull back like right after the event. Perhaps we saw that a little bit before, but all good. Okay, so on our BitMexican time frame, and let's go to our lower term time frames here because they're actually the most interesting right now. I'd say 8,500 on a 4-hour total closure would transpire a move all the way down to about 81, 8,000-ish region if you're a little bit more conservative. Or let's do like a $100 range between 80.50 and 81.50, and we'll just cut it to the middle at 81. 4-hour total closure below there, then I do target another $600 extension to about 75.50, probably another bounce there, and then continuation down to the lower 7,000s, at a later date. But as long as Bitcoin holds 8,500, I think that this just reaccumulates here. I feel like we've seen this before a lot, and then pops back up and tests around 9,100. That's where things get interesting once again. If Bitcoin does break above 9,100, I think the next major area to be aware of is 94. Although I don't think really, my personal opinion, again, divorced from technical analysis, but my personal opinion is it'd only be a very short-term pullback here, and then setting up for a real move back up to 97, 9,800-ish region. So let's go look at those ranges now with the numbers in mind. Again, to the downside, 8,500 on a 4-hour total closure, and 9,100 to the upside on the same time frame. By the way, just looking at a 12-hour right here, it does say that the above target probability at 9,100 is about 9.5%. Below target probability, this is for 8,100, by the way, so this would be the higher term or the medium term time frames range. Below here is actually 2 spots, about 2.75% chance as well. But let's change this. Or sorry, first let's look at this on a daily. On a daily, it would show 18.5% to the upside. That actually bodes rather okay for boo laws, I suppose. For the downside, about a little bit less than 10%, it looks like. Below 8,100, but it's really 8,500 on the lower term time frame. So now I want to put in 85 for like a 4-hour and see what that shows. So obviously 8,500 on the daily close is going to be significantly more than the upside, because we're right around there right now. But let's look at what it looked like on a 4-hour, and on the next 4-hour total closure, which happens in about 1 hour and 49 minutes and 31 seconds, 5.81% chance that it closes above 9,100, so pretty unlikely. Definitely not my first read on that. Below target probability, so below 8,500, which would transpire that next $400, $500 move to the downside, 23.5%. So if bears are going to take control, I do think that they do it sooner rather than later. I do think that if we're going to see more downside, it probably happens today, maybe tomorrow, and it probably happens sometime around traditional markets, and traditional markets are probably going to give the direction as well. If traditional markets, if you see NAS continue to make new highs here, I do think that Bitcoin's going to pop back up and tag around 9,100. To me, this looks if this was NDX and not NAS futures, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's obviously bullish. We're probably going to be popping back up another $250 on this one, and that would look overall good. But because this is futures, I am a little bit skeptical here. But at the end of the day, I'd wait for traditional markets to open up 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, and we should have direction by then. Also, is there anything obvious on GBTC maybe before we go? We're going to open up way lower on GBTC. Holy shit. Okay, so fair enough. I don't really have anything to add there. But yeah, overall, the major look here is that bears still have trend. I mean, they still have lower highs and lower lows on the over the long period of time. Fair enough. That is quite powerful and does supersede just about everything else. Bulls don't really, bulls from a trending perspective have nothing except for, well, they don't really have anything actually. funnily enough. So fair enough. It's I do think that actually if bears are going to take control, today should be, or maybe tomorrow will be a very eventful day. But more sideways here does bode better for the Bullahs, is what I'm trying to say. So I think I'll wrap that up right now. Again, really just game for the short-term timeframes right now, and I'll come back on it tomorrow with some more fresh analysis, hopefully, assuming that no massive, assuming nothing massively catastrophic doesn't happen. Knock on wood, baby. Knock on wood. All right, man. I'm buddy or girl or woman or other gender pronouns that exist in this world. Who knows what they are nowadays? But I'd like to be respectful of them. Anyone's welcome here. We're hashtag. You know what it is. Anyways, I'm be signing off now. I want to wish you well once again. Take care, and until next time.